Good afternoon, everybody. We're here in Dayton Public Schools with 8 former principals to talk about the value of an instructional walkthrough. I'm David Lawrence, the current interim superintendent of Dayton Public Schools, and I'm here with 7 other amazing instructional leaders who are going to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Miner, Associate Superintendent.
Hello, my name is Dr. Marvin Jones, and I am the Executive Director of HR.
Good afternoon. I'm Judy Spurlock, and I'm the Interim Chief of Elementary Schools.
Hello, I'm Erin Dooley, Chief of Secondary Schools.
Hi, I'm Sharon Goins, Director of Equity.
Akeisha Sheehy, the Chief Academic Officer. I'm brand new to the job, and it's a dream, and I just can't believe it, so excuse me.
Good afternoon. I'm Mindy Clark, and I am the Director of Accountability and Assessment.
Yeah, so we came here today, and I want to remind everybody, too, that I came here today. This is dressed down day in Dayton Public Schools with jeans, and I have on my Belhaven Bobcat t-shirt, so shout out to the Belhaven Bobcats. So we're here today to talk about the instructional walkthrough. It is supposed to be the core of what principals do. Now, principalship has changed over the years. It used to be managerial tasks, but now principals are asked to be instructional leaders. And the question today is, let's talk about one of those tools that they use called the instructional walkthrough. And the first question I want to ask to the 7 other principals in the room is the framework or the way the instructional walkthrough is developed. Does that matter?
Yes, I'll go first. I think it does matter. Whatever you're expecting, you set the expectations of instruction, whether it be certain strategies or a certain instructional framework, and you make sure that all your teachers know and understand what is expected, and then you let them know strategically, this week 1, this is what we're looking for, and you make sure you go and give them feedback on those specific strategies.
I have a follow-up to the team. Are all walkthroughs made the same? Do they all produce the same outcomes as it relates to changing teacher instructional practices?
No, I think that they're different in that the shorter they are, the less valid. I think the longer they are, the more valid in terms of capturing instructional methods in practice. Your original question talked about the importance of walkthroughs. I think it's twofold. I think the main thing is, of course, academic. We're trying to capture narrative and quantitative and qualitative data to talk about instruction in our buildings. I said, but there's a second piece to walkthroughs. It also helps to build the culture that students are expecting us in classrooms at any given time. That if we do them routinely, daily, the kids know that you're going to be in classrooms. And so that helps to build classroom culture, the appropriate classroom culture, in my opinion.
So I agree 100%. You know, the what is important because it has such a profound impact on culture. You know, like, there's such a misunderstanding about what culture is, and we have to be really intentional about, you know, what we're looking for when we go into a classroom, because the feedback is going to be critical to developing the culture that you want to see in the building and in the classroom, to Ms. Goins' point.
I agree with that. The framework is really critical so that we are setting expectations, like you said. And that expectation of excellence, and also making sure that they know it's not about, it's not about gotcha. It's really coaching. So we're setting the stage for the purpose, and I think that's really important.
And I wanted to add, it's a trifold for me. First, those rich conversations about with the teacher, what's happening, ideas of, have you thought about this, or have you thought about adding this or expanding your conversations or your DOK levels? It's also about observing what the students are doing. And then when you see them in the lunchroom saying, that was such a nice job. I loved how you answered that question. And then when you're in the car line and meeting with the parents and saying, I just have to tell you how wonderful your child did in answering those questions. So for me, those walkthroughs is building relationships myself with not only the teacher, but also the students and parents.
You know, I just want to be the principal that says, and I have tears running down my face right now, I'm crying. It says, I just can't get to all that. I have so much to do in the building. What would you say to that, principal?
That has to be the priority. Walkthroughs have to be, in terms of, when we were in school, in principal school, in terms of your prioritizing your day, walkthroughs has to come first. Managing the building and the classroom second. But number one the major portion of your day should be spent doing walkthroughs.
I would also add to that if you want to lessen all those other things, you can do that by using the walkthrough, because it's really going to affect all of those other things that you really think are filling up your day. If you got out and did those walkthroughs and you were in the classrooms with the teachers and the kids and in the hallways, you would not have as much of the other things.
I agree. It definitely decreases those distractions and discipline issues because the students know you're in the buildings, and it does have to be a priority, 100%. And being in buildings this week, I remember talking to one of the new principals, and they were getting bombarded with parent meetings and students, teachers in their office. And I said, your instructional walkthrough time is a priority. Block it off. Let everybody know on your calendar and make sure it's uninterrupted. And so it's just the time management piece, which sometimes is difficult for new principals, but you have to make it a priority. And you're right, Mindy, it is going to make it a lot less discipline problems as you go along.
As we think through this process, I think Judy and I, and maybe Dr. Lawrence were talking the other day, and the walkthrough is more effective and impactful, in my opinion, than evaluations. I mean, I think evaluations are obligatory. We just do them to get through them.
Yes.
But real routine, comprehensive walkthroughs are a lot more effective than evaluations, in my opinion. What do you all think?
Oh, I agree.
I agree
I think the
wholeheartedly.
research would support that too.
I agree, and the research does support that. What about this idea? I'm sitting in a room with 7 other principals. So that makes 8 of us total. And I emphasize the word principals for a reason. In preparing for today, I was looking at the research, and it talked about the gap between principals and assistant principals in terms of walkthroughs, and the amount of frequency that is far less with assistant principals. How do we get assistant principals ready to be principals if they're consumed with all those other things other than instructional leadership? I would ask the 7 principals that.
As a principal, I was very mindful of that. When I had an assistant, the goal was that they take my position. I wanted to train them in a way that they could take my position at any time. And as a principal, I would always tell people, I am the principal teacher. And that was my mindset. So any class, in any building, I can teach this class. And so going in and watching what's happening, constantly reflecting on what's good practice.
And I'm going to join in on that. I was just talking to 2 assistant principals this past week, and they were talking about a newer one and someone that's been there for a couple years. And it's a collaboration. And it's a collaboration between that administrative team of making time for everyone to have the opportunity, and also about meeting and having those instructional conversations. Last year, my assistant principal and I would meet in the mornings, and we would say, where are you going? Where am I going? So that we can make sure that we cover that building, and making sure that we're seeing what's going on, and then we would come back and debrief too, because we want to make sure that we are there to support And we also loved being able to share all the wonderful things that we saw in the classrooms, and really wanted to be able to highlight that in our weekly newsletter too. Because sometimes when teachers are in other people's classrooms, they don't get to see what's going on. And so in TBT meetings, we're able to share, like, oh, I saw somebody else teach that similar concept. You might want to get with them and you can see what they did, and they'll have some wonderful ideas. So it's about sharing and collaborating, not only with the administrative team, but with other teachers too, because we have such amazing things that are going on in our buildings and in our classrooms. The other piece is when we said that we were all principals, we're all educators first. Whether we are educating our teachers and working with them or administrative partners, but we are educating everyone, and that's a piece. We're lifelong educators as well as being administrators.
So
Ms. Dooley, I saw you smile when she said split the building up. For those who don't know, I was Ms. Dooley's assistant, and we used to split the building up. What would you say, Ms. Dooley?
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Block out time on your calendar. Who are our priorities? Maybe you have a teacher who's really struggling and maybe has some personal things going on, and walkthroughs can be very positive. I mean, they can be opportunities to, provide praise, either verbal or written. But in terms of, getting those assistant principals out into classrooms, that is your management tool. That's what we all do to manage our buildings, to manage what's happening with adults, with instruction, with kids, with the dynamics between adults and kids. And it doesn't always have to be formal, and the look-fors don't always have to be the same from walkthrough to walkthrough. So you might have a climate issue going on in your building, and maybe your walkthrough is just to boost people up, just walk around and make people feel better. Or you might see that we have a little bit too much downtime during class periods, so let's shift our look-fors to adapt to the need of the building. But definitely, that's time well spent. It's time that you have to invest. So yeah, it's all very interconnected.
I think the intentional division of duties by grade level, by subject matter, kind of lessens that whole notion that APs just do discipline.
you always say what I'm thinking.
Well, I want
my thunder a
I
little
want you
bit.
to know.
So let me.
And she said that.
Yeah. So
That's what I did. And I got it from Miss Dooley. So Miss Dooley really said it. And then I said it. Then she said it.
So I'm piggybacking.
Because he never gave you credit.
So
he presented it to us like he had this great idea.
yeah. So I'm piggybacking, right? So full disclosure, like being totally candid, I've been good at it, and I've not been so good at it. Context matters. Intentionality is so critical. And so one thing that I felt really helped me in the past is sitting down with, my APs and developing lesson plans, like principal lesson plans for the following week. Like, we know these teachers are struggling in this area, classroom management, differentiating instruction, whatever it was. And we develop lesson plans. This is when we're going to go into classrooms. This is the type of feedback that we're going to provide. This is the type of support we're going to provide. We also know that we have these meetings scheduled, whether they're IEP meetings or DLT. We're going to be out of the building. Intentionality is king, and so having a plan in place for that following week, I think, is king. And I didn't do a great job of that all the time. I did find myself once the first part of the day, there's a fight, and you got to break up the fight, and the adrenaline is racing. The learning centers of your brain are shut down. You're a Neanderthal. Now you got to go into a classroom and render effective feedback for a teacher. And your hands are still shaking. You're sweating. So there's a roller coaster all day. Yeah.
You said what we all were thinking.
Yeah.
So how do we, from a Ludlow downtown positionality, how do we support buildings? How do we not? Because that is a thing, and it can become a thing for days. It can become a thing for weeks. It can become a thing for years. How do we support buildings in that, not the I got you, but in a way that they don't have to just stay in that fight or flight mode, that they can really do some really good work around instructional feedback and improvement.
Ms. Goins, that's a great penultimate question. That's the question before we close, because there's one last question, but that's a great setup for the last question. How do we provide support? Because that's our job, right?
I think we've already started to do that. I think putting the human resources that we do have in the buildings is step one. And that's checked, that's been done and is in progress. Secondly, I cannot say enough. If you schedule on your calendar that Assistant Principal 1 is doing walkthroughs from 8 to 10, then you act like that person is not in the building. And everybody else takes the calls, everybody else does the running, everybody else becomes the Neanderthals as needed. But you leave Assistant Principal 1 alone. Because otherwise it will always become the last priority, because I always used to describe this work to my family who never understood my hours, that it's like being a ball in the pinball machine, and wherever the paddles throw you is kind of where you go, because a crisis is a crisis. But we have some control of that, but it's the truth. You might get out of your car with your beautiful planner and you've got your day laid out and you have an incident in the parking lot before you even walk through the door. But somebody has to be freed up to do this other type of instructional monitoring and walkthroughs. Some days just don't go as planned, but it has to be a priority. It can't be that we're all doing this or we're all paying attention to that. It can be scheduled.
So that's one great piece of advice to help support principals.
And I would like to add something. When you are a new administrator, it's a learning curve. And you have to give yourself some grace, but you also have to know the areas that you need to work on. And you need to do some research, and you need to have some conversations with colleagues, because they're a great support system. And you have to teach yourself sometimes with that research, because you don't know every area of curriculum. You don't know every grade level standard, but you know good instruction. And you focus on what you can, and then you learn and ask questions, because questions, no matter where you are, can help you grow.
Let's hear from LeBron James. There's only one LeBron James in here right now, because all the rest of us, I think, were assistants. There's one person here who went straight to principalship. Chief Academic Officer Sheehy, would you like to talk about how to support principals?
One thing, since you said that, I remember a conversation. I remember Erin came in my office, and I'm just, and she asked me a question, are you ready or something? I'm like, ready? We ready for what? She said, going into a building. I said, no, next year I'm going to be here. She was like, no, you're not. And I was like, if you're not ready, you better get ready. And I was just like, what? And then not only did I have to be ready, I had to go into the lowest performing school, elementary, in the district.
Most suspensions.
Whew, that was tough, but it was amazing, and the support that I got, it was about the support and the autonomy to make the changes that I thought were necessary for kids. And if I put the kids first, the support came. And so for the novice principals, the new principals, I think, like you said, we have to be vulnerable. Looking back, I did not know what I didn't know. I thought I knew something. I mean, and that's just like the teacher. You talked about the young people. They think they know everything. And we're like, But I didn't know. If I would have known, I wouldn't have succeeded, because it's daunting. So just being vulnerable, asking questions, and know that it's growing. And we're still all growing. So just keeping that in mind and kids first.
And thanks, Akeisha. You're so right. Because as a new administrator, you think, oh, I don't want them to know I don't know or whatever. And sometimes principalship is really lonely. I worked for many years with no assistant or anything. It was just me. And when you're in that situation, you don't even know who you have to depend on. But those listening in response to the question, how can we help? New leaders or even seasoned leaders out there, if you want someone just to piggyback, go along with you, doing your instructional rounds, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We'd be more than happy to come and just join you and do a calibration session, because sometimes you just need that support.
I just think of some of the teams, and I think about us as a team, and we would calibrate. We as a team had to say, let's go into some classrooms together. And are we all seeing the same thing, and have some rich dialogue around what we're seeing? And so I think each team at some point should do that. Then we liked it, and it became a thing. Remember?
The research suggests that the principal should take the assistant principal with them for calibration. That is what the research
With
says.
us. Judy and I took you with us.
Wait a minute.
I trained him good.
You two were the assistants. Dr. Jones, you were going to say something.
That vulnerability piece, really leads to self-awareness. I don't believe that we can be the best that we can be as principals if we're not willing to be vulnerable and self-aware, aware of where our shortcomings are, our weaknesses. Because when we identify those things, we do tend to reach out a little bit more. Like over the past 2 years, I wish I had reached out more to Chief Dooley, more to Ms. Goins, more to you. You guys were principals at Thurgood.
I was last?
Right.
Well, I'm just working around the table. Say the best for last, right? Say the best for last. But in that too is the power of delegation and shared leadership. I know this is not my forte. Somebody else has a strength or skill that I don't have. So I can engage my, assistant principal in their personal growth,
The last question for our first ever podcast with the 8 of us, more to follow. Let's talk about a number. Let's talk about the technical aspect of principalship. What's a number that they should complete per day? Does that matter? I have some research on it, and I'll tell you afterwards, but what's that number? Yeah, per day.
I can tell you a year, we would do 1,000 a year. I'm not a number person. But
That equates to about 5 per day for each of us, and that's about what we did. We did about 15 to 25 walkthroughs per day, every day at Thurgood. It was relentless.
every day for years.
Did they always have a written component?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ms. Dooley. I talked about it earlier, but I didn't pull it out. It wasn't a good facilitator question. We always had narrative. We always had qualitative comments. It wasn't a check the box. We wrote notes and questions. And then a lot of this research says that Judy spoke earlier about the conversations. It says you have to go back and have at least 3 to 5 conversations with that teacher about that walkthrough.
And so that's why questions are invaluable. When you did this, did you consider, or what was the data points that you used for grouping, or have you? What I can't wait to see your follow through, or what was the pre-teaching? What did you do before this? Because I'll be back next week. Will you invite me back? So we always left questions because the teacher will come find you. Well, Ms. Goins, the question you asked on my walkthrough, and it spurred dialogue.
So just for clarification, Dr. Lawrence, you said something really important. 3 to 5 conversations per that one walkthrough.
That is correct. That is correct.
So
Because the volume is one thing. The research suggests the conversations are more important than the volume.
The dialogue.
So I go into this teacher's classroom right? I do my narrative, collect my qualitative data, right? I share that with the teacher in written form. But then I need to have 3 to 5 follow-ups with that individual on what I saw that day.
It doesn't have to be long or lengthy. It's almost like
Just
a
quick and
screener.
dirty, right.
Yeah, you could walk by the room on your way to, as you walk in the building in the morning, and make a comment about it. You might say something about it when you see them going to get their lunch. A couple days later, when you peek in and do a walkthrough, not a written walkthrough, but just a walkthrough looking for a kid,
Refer back to it.
refer back to it. I mean, because if you walk in the building all day, you're going to run across people all the time.
It's powerful.
Structures. What structures do we create?
Well, I appreciate all 7 of you for those listening.
Answer the question.
We
What-
said
the
we didn't
numbers.
we
You
didn't
said
really
you had
answer.
information
We
for
didn't
us.
really, I did say that. Thank you, Miss Sheehy. I did say that. The number is 3
A day?
a day. 3 the number. Thank you, Miss Sheehy.
So let's talk about the length, because there are lots of opinions about the length of a walkthrough. What does our research say?
So we are pioneering in mass now this year in this district. It's been done in other places, but in this one, this is the first time. Instructional rounds this year from Harvard, Leah Tell, Richard Elmer, who's now deceased, Elizabeth City. They, to me, have developed the foremost walkthrough framework. And it asks 3 questions. And it is, what are the students doing and saying? What is the teacher doing and saying? And what is the activity, assignment, or assessment? 3 questions, 3 narrative boxes. We as instructional leaders write in those boxes, not a checklist. And then we've added on to it questions and then recommendations. That's 5 boxes, but it's really qualitative. And the reason I think it's more groundbreaking, more effective than check the box. Check the box, to me, doesn't expand the conversation. Anytime you have to write those questions and recommendations about something really complex like teaching, it should look like we're talking about it should look now.
So should walkthroughs be 5 minutes? Should walkthroughs be 15 minutes? Should walkthroughs be a whole period?
I think to compile the amount of information we're talking about in that space, you need at least 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all. Hey, we're wrapping it up. This is the first installment.
Our inaugural.
Yes, our inaugural. If this goes, what do the kids say? If
Viral.
This goes viral. Yeah, if this goes viral, I won't be back.